Now I come to our institutional investor expert from ICD, Hedi Mejai. You are involved in ICD, which is the private sector development arm of Islamic Development Bank Group. Could you please share with us what is the strategy of the bank and its associated entities towards involvement of institutional investors in Islamic finance and the use of Islamic finance for these institutional investors to achieve sustainable development goals? There are definite plans I'm aware of from Islamic Development Bank, but it would be instructive for our audience over here to share, if you could share some of the salient features of this plan.
Definitely in a context where we have basically gone from 8 SDGs to 17, this really created a much bigger financing need really to fulfill this. We estimate in our IDB member countries basically about 93 billion to finance that gap. To give you an example of magnitude, in 2017, IDB Group committed about 11 billion US dollars. So you can see the difference between 11 and 93. So this really highlights the importance to reaching out to non-traditional, basically, stakeholders to mobilize money. Out of the 11 billion, about a third are mobilized basically from private sector sources with the involvement of the other affiliates of the group. And of course, this is really a very important KPI that we have to keep on increasing and ensuring that we are mobilizing more money from basically the private sector and institutional investors. Of course, the way we are engaging really to mobilize these resources is on different fronts, basically through direct co-financing, either co-financing with other multilateral institutions or banks or DFIs, straight basically co-financing. And this is the bulk of the activity of the group. Also, we started an asset management program whereby we launched different thematic funds. For instance, we have launched the IDB Infrastructure Fund 1 that was fully invested and divested. We launched the second IDB Infrastructure Fund 2. That is with the target of $2 billion with investments from Brunei Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, the Pension Agency also of Saudi Arabia, and the Ministry of Finance of Bahrain. So this is a platform where we basically managed to mobilize money from sovereign wealth funds and other institutional investors basically to finance infrastructure. Recently, we have launched also the Engage Fund, which is a thematic fund to mobilize basically resources to finance science and technology. Also on microfinance front, I mean, we have launched different initiatives and we are very much active to mobilize money and serve basically microfinance companies and SMEs. Also, we have launched a program called basically Brave Business Resilience for value-added assistance. And this is a program basically directed to help microfinance companies and SMEs in conflicted areas. And we started the first pilot program in Yemen. It's a very successful basically program whereby about 528 companies basically benefited from this. About half of them are owned by women, basically. So this really gives the menu from the big sort of large infrastructure funds to the micro funds. Also on the dissemination and networking and knowledge part, we have launched the IDB Sovereign Wealth Fund Forum mentioned by His Excellency in his speech. Basically, this is a forum, as it was highlighted by Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir. He's mentioning that a large number of the sovereign wealth funds assets are in our member countries. Actually, to be precise, out of the 92 sovereign wealth funds existing in the world, 32 are in our member countries, and these they hold half of the 8 trillion assets. So for that purpose, we have launched basically this forum to reach out in a more institutionalized manner basically to these sovereign wealth funds, to market similar initiatives like the IDB Infrastructure Fund and try to channel more money. Also, another reality that we have noticed, out of the resources of pension funds and sovereign wealth funds, about 76% are invested in liquid asset classes. And this really does not serve the purpose of SDGs that require long-term investments. So for this really creates a challenge for MDBs and governments to work really jointly on how we can create basically the right environments to channel these funds towards longer term maturity in terms of coming up with some de-risking products and also maybe some hedging instruments and so on. So this is also another area where we are pretty well active, and we have launched some advisory capabilities in this area to see how we can come up with new ideas. Some of the speakers spoke about the green sukuk that keeps on coming, and it's something that we will be working with UNDP and IRTI to come up with some ideas. Also on other fronts in terms of improving the regulatory environments and repatriation of funds and also hedging against currency. So all of these really are initiatives meant to increase basically the volume of funds going towards long-term investments. So this is really in a nutshell, but we'll be happy to elaborate more if needed.
Thank you. I would ask a very short question, and I'm sure there would be a short answer as well. Arsalan, he mentioned, that his bank issued an SDG sukuk recently. Does ICD or Islamic Development Bank have any plans to issue this kind of SDG-related products?
Definitely, and we should be really a main player on this. As you know, IDB has been a market maker of sukuk, and we were the first institution that has issued sukuk, and we are the largest sukuk issuer throughout the years. Also, we have been the founder of most of what we call the infrastructure Islamic institutions, whether in terms of accounting standards or standardization of contracts and knowledge sharing and so on. Also, we have started a program at the level of ICD where we started helping member countries and corporates issue sukuk, and we have been successful in doing that in some countries in Africa and others, and help them really to tap in capital markets and go to and finance themselves through non-traditional ways. So within that spirit, the intention, and this is the purpose of our engagement with IRTI and UNDP, and how we can come up with an institutionalized approach and define a framework to encourage the issuance of green sukuk and SDG sukuk, because it serves multiple purposes. First, it would help fund SDGs, but at the same time, increase the awareness of being really SDG friendly and so on. So far, I mean, as ICD, about 20% of our financing is climate change friendly. So this really goes very well within our sort of approach. In particular, that we have integrated basically climate change and SDGs sort of parameters in our toolkit and self-assessment in terms of development goals. So we are very much interested in this area, and we hope to see much more basically of it in the future.
Thank you. Very comprehensive.